When ye come together. This is a remake of a video that I did about, 10 or 11 years ago. I accidentally erased it for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm redoing it. Now the scriptures deals with this starting in 1 Corinthians 11 chapter and ends at 1 Corinthians 14 chapter. Now, there's nothing in the scriptures about going to church. Just isn't. Joining the church, being a member of a church, holding church membership. Nothing like that is found in the scriptures. Just isn't. But in this chapter, these chapters rather, Paul is talking to the Corinthian church or the Corinthian assemblies and giving them instructions on what to do when you come together. Now, 1 Corinthians 11 chapter, starting at verse 17, just read a little bit of this. And now, in this I declare unto you, I praise you not, that when ye come together, not for the better, but the worse. But first of all, when ye come together in the church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and I pause you to believe it. I'm going to skip to verse 20. When you come together, therefore, into one place, is it not to eat the Lord's Supper? That's verse 20. Now, that word come together in those verses is found about 4 times. Now in verse 33, it said, therefore, my brethren, when ye come together to eat, tarry one for another. Come together, come together, come together. When ye come together, when ye come together. Now I've talked about these verses in another video. Coming together to eat. The early Christians came together to eat and to fellowship. And they did that a lot. Acts 20 chapter, the chapter that we used to justify a church service, Paul came together with those disciples. Acts 20, starting at verse 7, he was talking and eating with them. He was not preaching a sermon. He really wasn't. He was not preaching a sermon. He was talking and eating with them. From sundown until early in the morning. There was no sermon there. He was eating and fellowshipping with the disciples at Troas. Now, the last time the word come together is mentioned in chapter 14. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, 12, 13, and 14 all ties together. It really does. It all ties together, people. All of it is tying together. It's starting in chapter 11 with eating together and fellowshipping, as well as celebrating the Lord's Supper. Then 12 deals with spiritual gifts. 13 deals with operating in love with the gifts of the Spirit. And 14 is giving certain corrections regarding tongues, interpretation of tongues, and prophecy. Now I'm going to read a little bit of 14 now regarding come together, starting at verse 23. 14:23 rather. If therefore the whole church be come together into one place, and all speak with tongues, and there come in one that's unlearned, unbelief, will they say that you are mad? But if all prophesy, there come in one that believeth not, One unlearned is convinced of all and judged of all. 25. And thus are the secrets of his heart made manifest, so falling down on his face, he will worship God and report that God is in you of a truth. 26. How then, brethren, when ye come together? Every one of you hath a psalm, hath a doctrine, which means a teaching, hath a tongue, hath a revelation, hath an interpretation. Let all things be done unto edifying. See, when ye come together, one has a song. One has a doctrine, a teaching. One has a tongue. One has a revelation. One has an interpretation. But let all things be done in decency and in order. There's nothing in Corinthians or in these chapters about a sermon from pastor, because in 1 Corinthians, I think it's, yes, on down, 1 Corinthians 14 on down, verse 25 say, let the prophet speak, 2 or 3, and let another judge. There's nothing about a sermon by pastor in these chapters. It's talking about the body of Christ properly operating in their gifts and sharing their gifts, encouraging each other in their gifts, being led by the Spirit of God in their gifts, encouraging one another in their gifts, coming together to edify one another, to bless one another, to encourage one another, to love one another. When ye come together. Now, I've been in church 50 years, literally. I say that a lot. The only time I've seen this is in one church. Church I joined in February of 1977. It was called South Charismatic Teaching Center. I was under this preacher's ministry from 77 to 82. After he left and went back to Texas, I never saw it again. I tried to get it operating in the church I joined in 1987. It only worked for a little while, because after the pastor died, it went right back to regular church. When ye come together into one place, let all things be done unto edifying. See, we are doing church wrong. We are coming together wrong. We come together to worship, to hear the praise team, to hear the worship singers, and to hear church announcements, and to some project that the pastor got for the people to do, and all kind of nonsense. Then to hear a sermon from him and pay him 10%. None of that is mentioned in coming together, people. None of it. We are doing it wrong. When ye come together. When ye come together into one place, edify one another when you come together. God bless.